want to direct ourselves tonight and maybe in some future shiurim as well on the concept of Jewish ethics. Okay? Now, what I mean by ethics is interpersonal behavior that involves concepts that are put into the realm of logic. We can think in terms of mishpatim, the things that, the mitzvot that supposedly are seichelic and so forth, and this type of concept in terms of what we would call the mitzvot that are ethical. The problem that exists, or what I perceive the problem that exists, is that people lose sight of the complexity of what I would call Jewish ethics. And one of the problems, and there's so many different aspects to this problem, but one of the problems is the fact that in order to one of the motivations in people observing mitzvot is the uniquely Jewish aspect of mitzvot. So when you have a chok, like kashrus, it's very clear that you're being Jewish. But if you have mishpatim that the general population does, then it's universal ethics. It's like, what's Jewish about it? So it doesn't stand out as being Jewish. It's just, like people should be good, and so forth. So the point is one of the questions we could be asking, is there something that's unique about Jewish ethics?
Well, there's an idea with kaparos, right? Like people right now have a big thing against they want to outlaw kaparos on chickens, but they want to call it tzar b'alechaim. But if you look at the halacha, the idea of what tzar b'alechaim really is, there's nothing to do with kaparos.
The fact of the matter is that you're raising an interesting question, because the fact is that the truth of the matter is kaparos is not a problem because of tzar b'alechaim.
Right.
Technically, because tzar b'alechaim is only aser when there's no benefit to the human being.
Right.
Okay, so for example, when they had the whole question about cosmetic, about testing on animals for cosmetics, that would not be a problem with tzar b'alechaim. Because there was a benefit.
Right.
Tzar b'alechaim is only when you do something. There's no. You only do something for the animal. You do something for you do something to the animal. Well, the only thing that you want to do is see the animal be tortured or whatever. But there's no practical benefit. However, there is another concept. It's a concept that generally referred to as achzarius, and it's a concept that's used to explain why Jews shouldn't hunt. In other words, the concept of sport hunting. If you go sport hunting and you kill a deer, and then it doesn't matter, you eat it, then you sell the carcass to some non-Jew, then it's not a problem with tzar b'alechaim. But the fact is, Noda B'Yehuda still says, I think it's Noda B'Yehuda, but Noda B'Yehuda says that Jews should not be doing sport hunting. Why? And this is an idea that's brought down in the Ramah as well, if I remember correctly. The fact is that there's another side to it. The point is what will it do to your midos? Okay, if you develop an insensitivity to animals, and you're able to sort of live with being cruel to animals, that can make you a person that has developed certain midos of achzarius, of cruelty. So the point is that that raises an interesting question of kaparos. The point is, when you take kaparos, I'll explain how I understand kaparos. If you take kaparos and you basically are waving the chicken over your head and you don't feel any type of compassion for the chicken waving over your head, it's irrelevant to you, will that develop an aspect of insensitivity? Now the truth is that it might be, if you look in terms of kaparos, you're supposed to actually feel bad for the chicken. The Ramban says by karbonos, for example, says one of the tamim of karbonos is because
you should feel that.
You should
feel the grace of God go on.
That could have been me. In other words, you should feel bad for the animal, and basically say, listen, this could have been me, okay, and you should feel bad for it. So the truth is that there's a concept there's a concept over here. So I think in terms of kaparas, if you go to kaparas and you make a joke of it, and you're waving the chicken over your head, you don't feel any compassion for the chicken, then there's a possibility to develop chazarias. The point is, if you take kaparas and you sit there and do this, and you understand that kaparas is the idea that it could be me, right? I'm using the chicken to tell.
Right, it's a kapara. That's what
it's a kapara. Then that should be your thoughts. But the fact is, it's a much deeper understanding. But the truth is, it touches upon ethics, because what it touches upon is this idea that you are supposed to look deeper into concepts. See, one of the things is that people time their life differently, and this is an aspect. It's a good example of not really knowing the technical aspects in terms of the mitzvot. If you use the word sar bali chayim, then you're going to miss the whole point. If you go further into it, you understand that there's an aspect of how you treat animals, not because you're concerned. It's not the big machlokas Ramban, but the fact is if you understand, it's not because you're actually concerned about the animal, but you're concerned about the midas and the effect about you because you develop insensitivity. The Torah said, or there's a concept, you do this because you are developing an idea that this is a kapara for me.
That's Jewish ethics?
What? No, that's an aspect of Jewish ethics. But the truth is that you can argue that it's universal ethics. That you should not have midas of zarias.
Rabbi, I'm a little confused with the idea of zarias. So it's the idea of senseless killing is.
The fact is that
because you're allowed to be aggressive as a Jew.
Right. The fact is, the way to know that Yehuda understands it by hunting is to enjoy sport hunting. You're losing your sensitivity.
Like self-defense training.
That's something different. That's something different. You have a purpose for it.
Right.
I think there's a story about the Chavetz Chaim. Someone came to the Chavetz Chaim. They wanted to take this job. So the Chavetz Chaim said, "What's the job?" He said, "I'm going to be working in a bank." He said, "What are your duties at the bank?" He said, "I'll be taking money in all day." So the Chavetz Chaim said, "No, don't take the job." So the guy said, "No, but it's not my money." So he says, "No, but even so, you'll get in the habit." He said, "If you had a job giving up money all the time."
The fact is,
so
okay. So the truth of the matter is, you have to step back. It's actually a machlokas Ramban and Ramban about the what you're supposed to learn from things. I think the machlokas is about aim of bno, about the isser of shchita, of killing of shechting a mother and a child. I think it's by those psukim that there's a machlokas Rambam and Ramban. It's a subtle machlokas. Are you actually supposed to feel bad for the mother animal's pain over the mother being over the shechita at the same time, or whatever? Is that really the concern? Okay. Or is the concern the effect upon your midos? Okay? So I believe that the Ramban says, you're not really concerned about the animal. He says that's not really the issue. It's not the fact that you actually feel, the animal's feeling this tremendous pain and I feel bad. It's the fact that these mitzvot develop proper midos within you. It's a matter of what kind of person you become. That I believe, and I think it's applies to distinction in the mitzvah of understanding the two tzadim in Tsar Balei Chaim. Tsar Balei Chaim is only aser. Okay? You're not allowed to cause cruelty to animals unless there's a benefit to human beings. That's Tsar Balei Chaim. Okay? Just going out there and pulling wings off butterflies without getting a issue whether Tsar Balei Chaim applies to insects or not. But the point is that you pull wings off butterflies because you like to see them suffer. That's Tsar Balei Chaim. But if you do something like you're testing on rabbits to see how it affects cosmetics, that's not Tsar Balei Chaim because there's a reason for it. You're seeing what happens to beings. Okay, now. Now that's veal's a perfect example. It's not Tsar Balei Chaim.
It's not.
It's not Tsar Balei Chaim. Now becomes the second because right. So
there's
now.
A way of eating. There's a way
but the fact of the matter
without giving cruelty to the animal.
The fact of the matter is that there's a benefit to human beings. It's not technically Tsar Balei Chaim. Now comes the second.
That's what you're saying, basically.
That's why Tsar Balei Chaim. That's a technical definition of Tzar B'alei Chaim. Now, there's another concern.
We are? Yeah.
There's another concern.
No, you are.
What?
I let ask questions.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another concern.
I do like animals.
Okay, the other concern is this, is that even if it's not over Tzar B'alei Chaim, okay, in other words, technically, you are doing this, and there's a benefit to human beings, the question is, what kind of effect does it have upon your midos? Okay? Now, on that level, with Tzar B'alei Chaim, if there's any benefit, then it becomes mutter in the Tzar B'alei Chaim. But if there's a concept where you're going to do something that's going to have an effect upon your midos, you're going to develop an insensitivity. Because you don't care about the animal, if you develop an insensitivity, and that could...
The story of the rabbi and the cat.
By Rabbi.
By Rabbi.
By Rabbi. That's an example. He said that was your good. He says listen, you should... Right.
So tell the story.
What happened was that there was this calf who was going to be shechted and ran away to hide behind Rabbi.
Right.
So Rabbi said, that's what you were created for. You can go get shechted. And because of that, Rabbi got very sick. He was sick for many, many years.
So what do we learn
that you have to be sensitive. There's a matter of even though Rabbi no, the animal could be shafted. That's not the issue.
So why was he being insensitive then?
Because the way he said it, this is what you're created for.
But that's not certain. So what's wrong with that?
Because he didn't say it with a sensitivity. That's the whole point.
Was that for Rabbi? Because Rabbi was on his
Madrega. That's right, Rabbi's Madrega.
Because then they went on, the next part of the story is his housekeeper was sweeping away mice, and he was sympathetic. So even by mice. And then the klala was lifted.
Right.
Well, you know with David HaMelech, he said, what's the use of having a spider?
But there's a subtle distinction here. That's exactly it. The Tzar B'alei Chaim says you're allowed to do this to animals as a benefit. Then there's a question of a further analysis to see how it's going to affect your midos. And the point is, you're supposed to have the midos sense. Now, like I point out by hunting, if I remember correctly, the other beginner says, listen, if you're making your living from being a trapper, then be a trapper. That's not the issue. But you have these people who go out sport hunting, and they're going to shoot a deer,
fox hunts,
right, or something like that. Fox hunts. He says, or bullfights. There's a difference between shafting animals that you're going to eat, or if you do something. See, bullfights is the problem with me for Tzar B'alei Chaim because it's only for entertainment, anyways. So that might really be a Tzar B'alei Chaim. But let's say with hunts. With hunting, you have sport hunting. The fact is that's not going to develop a sensitivity. That's not good in terms of developing sensitivity. That's an example of... Now, if you're a trapper and that's where you make your livelihood, then that's what you do. But the point is that what I'm trying to say is this is actually a big issue in terms of the Machlokas between Rambam and Ramban about this concept is the point of how it affects your midos, or is the point is really that you're supposed to be sensitive to the animal.
So what about watching hockey? Where they beat each other up, and you know there will be violence, and you're paying them.
Yeah, so it's a matter like it might become an issue. It might become an issue. For example, I know that not so much with hockey, but I know with football, when people are already fed up with you see these. I mean, but that's a good example. You see, football is a good example because you have people.
I didn't want to bring up football because Mindy's a fan.
Okay, no.
Football, they all end up with concussions.
Yeah, but football. By the way, I also do watch football sometimes. The truth of the matter is that when you're brought up, go and kill them, and it becomes something where you're physically going to hurt. You want to hurt the other guy, and like football's a very rough, very violent sport.
Like boxing,
right? That's all part of the issue. The fact of the matter is that. But again, for self-defense, there's a value. But the point is that's an idea.
Rabbi, you watch action movies?
What?
You watch action
movies? So the point of the matter is that's what people say that you develop is that if you watch these things, it can affect you in terms of being sensitive to people, and that's part of the issue. I mean that's all part of the issue. The truth is that there's a certain sensitivity you should have. Like I remember what always hits me is that there's a balance over here. I mean, it always hits me that when Joe Theismann was finally hit and ended his career. I think it was Lawrence Taylor of the Giants who hit him, and Taylor tackled him. And when he saw that Theismann wasn't going up because his leg was pointing away, it showed that's what Taylor went crazy. He was calling for the sidelines, come out, going crazy. The truth of the matter is there was a balance there. He had a sensitivity. You play a game. But the truth of the matter is one of the big problems you have with football is the reason these people become so domestically abusive is that if your whole life is insensitivity to the other, and I'm going to hit the other and hurt the other and so forth and so forth. What do you think is going to develop from it? So the point is that that's a whole sad in the concept. And that's what I'm saying. Is the Machlokes Ramban, where the Ramban says the idea is in the Tamei mitzvahs, so these mitzvahs that talk about how you care for animals, it tells you something about what affects your midos. So these are aspects of it. But the point is that this is an example of Jewish ethics, but then you talk in terms of universal ethics. See, the issue that hits me is I have this thing where I find, to be honest with you, is that in many ways the ethical teachings of Torah, I don't think we focus on them enough. That's a general aspect I have of Jewish education.
Right.
We focus on, but the fact of the matter is we talk about it, but in terms of real talking in terms of education, how much time do we really spend on really understanding them and really looking at the mitzvahs? And the mitzvahs are very, very difficult. In terms of how much time do people really look through mitzvahs of kavod briyos, kibbud av v'aim, stalka, stuff like that. The mitzvahs are much more of the ethical mitzvot. But the fact is that in many ways that's a side issue about how many people really spend time really being ma'ayin in them, really learning them. But
there's only a couple things.
What? Pardon?
There's kibbud av, kibbud rav, and then shmir seinayim.
Okay, I mean, but what hits me is that there's more. But what hits me is the reason that you don't have people focusing on them to the extent they do is because they become because basically people think of them in terms of universal ethics. In many ways, people generally believing themselves to be ethical, which most people are. The fact is that they already think they already know the Jewish ethics. When you talk in terms of kiruv, how many people, when they're mekarev, say, "Oh, we got to learn kashrus, we got to learn, Shabbos, we got to learn nida. Oh, I have to learn how to be ethical."
Well, they're learning about Lashon Hara.
Yeah, so Lashon Hara is one example, but even in terms of Lashon Hara, it's usually focused on. And this is one of the big problems in Lashon Hara, to be honest with you, is that Lashon Hara becomes much more ritualized. And one of the problems people are talking about, for example, is in terms of shidduchim. That you have people coming up to you and asking you a question that you look at them and saying, like, listen, I know that Chaim here is going out with Sarah there, right? And Chaim is manic depressive with schizophrenic tendencies. And no one wants to tell Sarah, okay, because it's Lashon Hara, right? I've had these questions, and I'm sitting there and saying, wait a second, no one. What about the chiyuv that you have to tell Sarah? Okay, yeah, and this comes up all the time. I know this about this boy. Can I tell him? I sit there and say, if you know that about that boy or that about that girl, right? How could you not tell them? So the point is that that's because in certain ways Lashon Hara has become ritualized. Because Lashon Hara is a very, very difficult concept because it has to be balanced within the ethical concept. It's not just a ritualized concept. Yeah.
Do you think the laws of Lashon Hara could be relegated to sort of the golden rule? Don't say anything bad about people. Don't say anything that you'd rather not have said about you. No. And that the Chafetz Chaim went way too far with creating all these detail after detail when that indeed
there is an argument that the Chafetz Chaim made it much more. See, let me put it to you like this, because the Chafetz Chaim, everything in Chafetz Chaim, he's got sources and all worked out, and so forth and so forth. Let me put it to you like this. There was a rabbi here in Toronto called Sheldon Steinberg. I don't know if you... Yeah, he was a chaplain of JFNZ. He also was a big Talmid Chacham. And he once gave a shir for Nishma, and he mentioned something that the Rav said. And the Rav said, if you look in terms of, let's say, a lot of halachas, it's details. And when you get into the more Ben Adam Chavera halachas, it's like one or two simanim. He says, why? Why do you, he says, why do you have all these simanim on shchita and only one or two simanim? So he said, the Rav said that the thing is, when you're dealing with Ben Adam Chavera, there's always the random factor of the human being. And the human being there's situations that change in terms of the human being. So the fact is that the definition of kavod cannot be as exact as you have in a much more let's say chok type mitzvah. Like he said, for example, the Rav says a base of shchita is a base of shchita. It's here and this and this. But the example I'd like to give is an example like this. Is that there was a situation once where a friend of one of my daughters came over and was constantly referring to my wife as Mrs. Hecht. Okay? And constantly Mrs. Hecht. And my wife would constantly say, please call me Naomi. Okay? No. Okay. So this girl kept calling her Mrs. Hecht. So I said. So it got to a point where it was like becoming crazy. I mean, it was my wife was saying. So the girl said, "Oh, I was always taught that I have to honor my elders, and to honor my elders, I have to call them Mrs. Hecht. I got to call them Mrs. because you're the mother of one of my friends. I have to call you Mrs. This is what he was taught. So forth. It's proper honor." And my wife says, but for me, I want to, it's brilliant. So I pointed out to the girls, the Rishomi says, that the honor of a person is following their rutzon, following their will.
So why do you think there's a psak that you need to...
What?
There's something specifically...
You can't call your parents by their first
name. For parents. There's an issue about whether you can call your parents by the first name if they're moichel and they're kavod.
But how about...
Okay, one sec. If they're moichel and they're kavod. The problem is calling them by first names. Is that a question of yira or kavod? That's a different issue by parents.
But isn't there an issue with Naomi that she was being moichel on her kavod? Like
so the point... But she was... Yeah, so the fact is that's a different issue whether... Okay, but a parent can be moichel on their kavod. That's the issue. Yeah, a parent can be moichel on their kavod. The question is that does it apply to yira? Most people say it does apply to yira, but the point is that even and then it comes an issue of whether you should be moichel or not, and so forth. And then there's issues that even if they're moichel, should a kid still not accept the mechila? I mean, but there's other issues like that. But you get into issues like this. So, but the point over here is what I was saying to the person based upon the Yerushalmi is Podesh Adam Zuhi Ritzono. The honor to a person is following their will. So after you hear this woman saying to you so many times, what? Yes, it's subjective. After so many times that the woman saying to you, please, I don't want to be called that. I want you to call me by the first name. It's honor to her to call her by the first name. So the point is, it becomes subjective, and that's why the Rav was saying. That's what he said. The Rav was saying when it comes to interpersonal behavior, the concepts of Torah can't be so detailed. You have to have a little bit of understanding of concepts and balancing the concepts. That's an issue. That's an issue when people look at the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim was actually, if you read through the Chafetz, he's really bringing out all the various balances and concerns and people looking for heterim, this and this. But the point of the matter is underlying it, you have to understand the balance of the concerns. And the details of the concerns and so forth, and that implies on a very personal basis. That type of halacha is a different type of halacha. It's a halacha when you can't just write down the final conclusion. You can't say here's the final detail. You have to have the concepts. You have the concepts. You have to be able to apply it in situations. But the thing is that idea by itself is already an idea. But the problem that exists, or the issue that exists, is that the ethical concepts behind this, generally, how uniquely Jewish are they? It's a matter when you talk about these things, are you talking about universal ethics? Or are you talking about Torah ethics? Or how do you balance these things?
Where did universal ethics come from? They came from
well, the point is that where it came from and so forth, but part of the issue that exists is an issue of understanding how Torah connects to universal ethics. To many people, for example, I had this discussion about Shalom Bayis. Now everyone talks Shalom Bayis and so forth, and I pointed out that Shalom Bayis is a very specific concept, specifically talking about husband and wife. People take Shalom Bayis and apply it to any aspect and so forth, you know, the extended family and so forth and so forth. The fact of the matter is when it comes down to it, you have to say, what exactly is the Jewish ethic? And then how does it connect to universal ethics? Now the point is that in itself is a very difficult issue. Because when we think in terms of ethics, especially when you think in terms of mishpatim, the point is that it is supposed to be conceptual. See, when you're talking in terms of shechita or talking kashrus and so forth, the concepts are totally defined by the Torah. You know, I don't have an independent idea on, you know, on what kosher is. You know, it's like, and we'd laugh at some of this. I mean, I remember when they had the whole thing with lettuce back in the 70s. Remember, you know, the whole thing.
Alive.
Yeah, you weren't alive. That's right. The whole thing with lettuce. So the reform rabbinate in Boston came out and said that non-union lettuce is not kosher, right? And this was an issue where the ethical thing was supporting the union.
And grapes from California.
The whole thing in California, union with lettuce and grape pickers and so forth.
What was this?
Chevet, right. So the point is, they came out and said that non-union lettuce is not kosher. I also saw this by...
well, the conservative movement is doing that now with the Hecht sharing.
Right. The fact of the matter is guess what? If you want to say, this is part of the issue, the conservative doesn't necessarily do it this way, but it's part of the issue. If you want to say, listen, if a person is treating their employees, you know, improperly, right? So maybe you shouldn't buy from this person because he's other chitzarins, so that's fine. But say you shouldn't buy from him, but don't say it's not kosher. Right. Kosher is a very, very technical definition.
Although, but kosher in its broader sense.
But the point is,
if I've told this restaurant, can you say? I mean, the meat. No one says the food is kosher, but the avira is not kosher.
So then the fact is the point is to say there's other reasons for not going there. But the point is you want to be much more technical in terms of the definition. So the truth is, I don't have an, you know, when I see, you know, this non-union lettuce is not kosher. That's not a word. That's not correct. Say you shouldn't purchase non-union lettuce because
misuse of the term.
Right, exactly. But kashrus is where all these.
Okay, but how about saying veal? How about veal? Let's do veal.
Veal is also the veal's kosher, but maybe you have other issues in terms of it. But the fact is that that's an issue where what you get into is with kashrus you don't get an issue because the definition is totally, the technical definition is totally defined by the system, by the Torah system. But the problem is when you get into ethical things. Okay, so the point is when you deal with universal ethics, the problem is can you distinguish whether they're universal ethics, whether the Torah is projecting universal ethics, whether you are reading a universal ethic into the Torah. Whether you are, in other words, and the fact of the matter is the reason that's because it's such an issue is because we do have a perception on ethics, and that's what I wanted to get at here. The fact of the matter is when we get involved in ethical issues, the Torah actually informs us we have two yardsticks that we apply on ethical issues. Okay? One is the revelational yardstick of Torah. So Torah says, "Do not kill." So we know that murder is also, and we have this idea from the Torah telling us right and wrong. But we also have, the Torah describes that there's another yardstick we have to tell us about right and wrong. And this yardstick is presented. You have a yardstick that's called natural morality. It's from logic. You have a portion referred to as mipi seichel. Common sense, or the ethical natural morality. And first of all, the Meforshim say that this has a value. This is something you're supposed to consider. And we've already learned last week, right, in last week's Torah reading, that there is an ethical value within ourselves. Okay, it's the knowledge of Tov and Ra that we have incorporated into our own being. Now, how we got that into our own being is a different issue, but the fact is we did develop a concept of Tov and Ra. And the point is that it's considered Tov to be sneistic. If you actually look in halachas, it's a very fascinating aspect in terms of sneas, for example. Try and find a revelational source for sneas. Really look for it. Where do you actually see an actual isser of not being sneistic?
How about uncovering the nakedness of your...
What's the isser? What isser? What is? Tell me a statement that says clearly tying up.
In Tanakh
says a snake. Where did this concept of sneas come from?
It's interesting.
Right?
Well, how about the woman unpleating her hair and all that?
The question is that that's a whole issue where that came from, and so forth and so forth. The fact is that the source?
It comes from when you cover up your evacuations in more.
That's an aspect you're supposed to do, but where does it? Tell me where you. That's a good example of saying that you're supposed to be careful.
And if it goes for that,
okay, but where do you actually? Where do you have a concept?
I
understand, but where do you have a concept that you're supposed to be dressed?
Well, it's already from last
okay, we're ashamed. I wouldn't say garden.
Is there any mitzvah? Can you actually tell me of a tzivui that you have to wear clothes?
Well, we learned by Kal V'chomer. If you have to cover up your tzoah, then how much more so? What do you mean? You agree with the tzoah?
The fact of the matter is that the essence of that idea is really from the Eitzah of Ra. We know that it's wrong. All I'm pointing out is I'm not trying to develop a head here. What I'm trying to say is that this is a concept that we develop for our own concept. And now, the Torah may then further define it and so forth and so forth. But these are concepts. This is a concept that really says it's something you're supposed to feel within yourself.
Well, Adam and Chava didn't feel it.
But the fact is that it's a concept of recognizing Tov and Ra. Now, that's not just a concept that exists there, but the fact of the matter is we have within ourselves a moral yardstick. And therefore, the fact is we have a moral yardstick. We have a moral... Now...
But getting back to the Tov and Ra, when did they develop that aspect of Tov and Ra? Because first they were not supposed to eat from the tree of Tov and Ra, so that means they could type that they ate from the Tov and Ra so they would know Tov and Ra. Or did they know Tov and Ra before they ate from the tree? And
that's a whole big...
kind of worms, yeah.
No, that's a whole big issue. The fact of the matter is, there are people who say that eventually they would have to eat from the tree because there's a value in knowing Tov and Ra.
Right. So is the implication there that they didn't know Tov and Ra before?
The question of them not knowing Tov and Ra, it's a big issue. Was that a chisaron in them? The Rambam in the Moira tries to say that there must be a problem that they developed Tov and Ra.
But you're saying they had an innate...
The innate aspect came somehow after they ate.
So there's a good thing they ate from it, because we should have that.
Yes, the point is there are Meforshim to say, obviously it's a good thing. When the Nachash said, Vayitek Elokim, right? You'll be like you
should be as God. Eric Fromm's book. Yeah.
So the point is that no one says the Nachash was lying. The fact is that you have to have Yediyas Tov and Ra in order to emulate a Kodesh Baruch Hu. I mean, the fact is, if you look at a lot of the Meforshim there, that's exactly was the dilemma of Chava was a real dilemma, right? Because she would say Yitek Elokim. She understood that part of her objective is to be like God.
Like God.
So the point is that how can I be like God if I don't know Tov Ra? So what was the problem?
So the understanding is there that before they ate, they did not know the difference between Tov Ra, or maybe they were on...
No, they didn't know. They didn't know. Now there is a Rambam in the Moira who basically says there was a higher Madrig in Tov Ra. It's knowledge of Emes Sheker, and that Tov Ra was a following of Madrig and so forth. But the fact of the matter is a lot of people say, listen, they had to know Tov Ra, and the point is their lack of ability to know Tov Ra was a weakness, and the question was how they develop. And
so why did God want
so that's part of the questions that exist. There's one parish I saw who said the real mistake of Adam and Chava was they should have eaten from the Eitz Chaim before they ate the Eitz Tov Ra, because the Eitz Tov Ra said you have the onus of Misa. If they ate from the Eitz Chaim, they would have protected them to be eternal.
So the
problem is,
but
no, that's not so simple. The fact is that they wouldn't eat from the Eitz Chaim, then they could have eaten from the Eitz Tov Ra. I mean, the point is, the Meforshim that deal with that are dealing with the issue. The issue is that a moral yardstick within human beings is of value. Okay, we are supposed to feel that there's something wrong with stealing. We're supposed to feel there's something wrong with murder. We're supposed to feel be sensitive to the plight of others.
So Rabbi, where are you going with this? That we aren't exclusively, our moral makeup is not exclusive.
So the fact
Torah,
is,
there's other things.
The fact is that that's part. The point is I'm pointing out that we have two yardsticks. One yardstick is an internal yardstick of knowing Tov Ra, and the other yardstick is the yardstick of revelation.
Right.
Now the point is, universal ethics comes from an internal yardstick of knowing good and evil. Okay, so people out in the world have an idea. Not just Jews say you shouldn't murder, you shouldn't steal. Okay?
Well, but hold on. I want to argue with my father because I don't think he said it properly. It's like what we've been talking about with our shirim.
Yeah.
Because what came first, the chicken or the egg? So like it seems like first, know the Torah. The Torah overrides your.
So the fact is
that's the issue. What I think you were talking about.
So the truth of the matter is the two big cases with Avram is really a discussion of when these two yardsticks meet. There's two cases with Avram that are concepts of the meaning of these two yardsticks. The first is stone. Okay? Where God says, I'm going to kill these people. God says he's going to kill these people, then we know that must be a right decision. But what does Avram say? He says, what's going on over here? It's not justice. Hey, Avram, you think God knows justice? Go home. What are you thinking about, right? Right? So the fact of the matter is that the point is, Avram is saying, hey, I, through my yardstick, has to know. The truth is that there's a Rav in Liechtenstein, there's a whole thing that this is a classical, he's a whole article that this is a classical indication of the fact that natural morality, our own internal yardstick, has a value. Avram had his own internal yardstick of justice. And the other case is the Akedah. In the Akedah, Avram basically says, you know, no, he doesn't. He says basically, that's a tzibur, it must be the right thing to do.
They say now that there's even an altruistic gene, that the higher mammals will help other creatures.
Right. And that's, so the point is that's internal. So the fact of the matter is, it's all part of the issue. Now the truth is that you get about in those two cases of stone and the Akedah. I mean, the Akedah says that Sarah was very upset with Avram. There's a Midrashim said that because Avram did not question God about it. Avram should have questioned God.
Well, he's not good enough for that one. That's
but the point is that he is. The fact is that clash between those two yardsticks is it can come out very real. And the fact of the matter is, and you see them in certain cases. Like, for example, in the case of a guna, when you see the Gemara's perception of a guna. But when you look in terms of the Gemara's perception of a guna, it's like you know, It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. You know, it's like there's Rabbanim who work out Heterim for Naguna, and the world looks at this and says, well, why don't you just say she's okay? The point of the matter is, if you think it's so wrong to do it, because you're also bound to the halacha, and the fact is we have those tensions in certain situations. The point is you have those tensions, but another further tension that people talk about in terms of that internal yardstick is the fact is, do we really understand the Torah's statement of ethics, because it can be confronted by the universal ethic. In other words, what I find is that first of all, understanding that we have these two yardsticks. I understand that we have an internal yardstick and an yardstick from Torah, and the fact is we're supposed to somehow have both. There's some motivation of people to try and negate the internal yardstick and so forth. But the point is you have this sense. But the further analysis is to really understand that the Torah also speaks uniquely in the realm of ethics. It's not that in the realm of ethics, it's not that the realm of ethics is only the realm of universal ethics. It's a fact is, and that I find to be another consideration. Like, for example, the talk we had beforehand about Tsar Balei Chayim and animals and so forth and so forth, that has a unique Torah aspect to it, because it really deals with details in terms of what the problem is and what the issue is and so forth and so forth. And it goes a little bit, the Torah calls upon you to sort of split hairs a little bit more than happens in the universal perspective.
So what you're saying really is Kabbalistic, because there's Gevura and Tiferes, Netzach and Hod, there's this balance that Hashem built in through his Simpson.
The fact is that
that's the way it is.
Yeah, the truth is that many things that we I shy away from using Kabbalistic terms sometimes, and then people point out that.
Well, this is the Oliver residence.
Right. Okay. But the fact is, I remember that I forget who this was. I think it may have been Chaim Soloveitchik, the Rav's son. When he used to give shiur. Okay, so if you know anything about the brisker derech and learning, some of the important things is that it's a din in the hefzer, a din in the gabra, a din in the object, din in the person, and then there's a question of chalul shem, of the. In other words, these were technical terms that are all found throughout brisker type of learning. They use these terms and so forth to try and explain concepts. He had a rule. I think it was him had a rule in his shiur that whenever you speak, you can't use any of those terms. What I find is, and this is not to take away from the Kabbalah, I find that people, when they start using terms like Gvura and Chesed or Tiferes or something like that this, in other words, the term it becomes a term, and the real understanding of what the conceptualization of that term is lost. So what I try to do sometimes, and you're right, some of what I'm saying could be found as being somewhat involved in that Kabbalistic concept. But the fact is I shy away from using the terms because I want the person to gain the concept, because sometimes the term takes the place of the concept. And the fact is that really what you lead to is a concept of balance. I mean, the truth is that in many ways that really ties in terms of ethics. I mean, my own understanding of the ethical system is the fact that ethics is really a matter of how to balance the concepts. Okay, it's not. Most people have an ethical perception,
right? Which is what the Kabbalah is about, and it's all about balancing.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying also.
But what I'm saying is that most people, though, have a different understanding of ethics. Most people's understanding of ethics is the little devil and little angel from the cartoons.
Spiritual energies.
Like there's total bad, total good, and it's a battle between good and evil. When you actually deal with ethical issues, it's not. What you usually find is that both ethical concepts, in other words, the battle that you have to choose from, is usually two ethical concepts. They both have validity.
Right.
The question is which one should take priority now? And it's a very different concept. It's not just simply little, like bad and good. It's not black and white, bad and good. It's usually a concept where there's a reason for doing this and there's a reason for doing it. This represents this concept and this value and this represents that. So, and the question is, you have to make the decision of what's the better of the two goods.
So Rabbi, I'm just a little confused. So you started off saying this year that we have a lack in the system of ethical knowledge.
Right. No, there's not a lack in the system. Lack in the system of ethical knowledge. What I was saying is, I find that there is not enough of real investigation of Jewish ethics.
So halachic Jewish ethics?
Halachic Jewish ethics. Like I'm talking about really dealing in the concepts of Jewish ethics.
So
that's an observation.
They're there, but they're not certain.
So hold on.
Right. You wouldn't say
so. Hold on.
No.
So going back to what you're saying originally, because herein lies my question. So we don't have enough investigation into Jewish halachic ethics, and yet there's also this idea of this whole universal ethics that that almost seems, if you can challenge your Shem, you should be able to challenge your Rav.
The problem is what happens is like this. See, what happens is that the ethical issues are not really investigated in a halachic manner. Okay? Part of the problem is that when we think ethics, we think universal ethics. We don't really think of how the ethics connect with Jewish ethics.
So we're talking around it.
Take examples like end of life issues, time of death issues.
End of
life has so many issues.
But the fact that you see, the end of life issues become real issues because in the halachic consideration, there is actually a consideration for quality of life and quantity of life. The truth is, when you get into end of life, the idea that the person is suffering is not just dismissed. The person is suffering, and you actually sit there and say, person is suffering, and really it's person's in pain, and he's going to be in pain for another few days. He's going to die in a few days anyways. He's not getting better, and all he's going to do is be in pain for the next 3 days. Why are we keeping him alive or whatever? And the truth of the matter is that there's a feeling I'll give you a good example. There's there's a Ramosha who says maybe he doesn't possibly. He says maybe that euthanasia, if done by a non-Jew, could be mutter. Okay, could even be a mitzvah. He has arguments for this, so he says ulai. He's basically dealing with the case of Chanan ben Shradim. Chanan ben Shradim did not do anything to hasten his death, right? He was being burned alive, but his executioner basically, fanned the fire and took off the Sefer Torah, and took off the sponges, and fanned the fire, and then the executioner committed suicide also. So the point is, the Baskel came out and said, Chanani ben Shradim and the executioner both get olam haba. So the question is how is it okay for the executioner to hasten Chanani ben Shradim, if it's also to hasten someone's death, to perform euthanasia, how is it mutter for the executioner to do that? Okay, that's a question of the Gemara. So there's different terutzim. One teretz is that since the executioner is the one who started the process of killing him, it was his process, he could hasten it because he was already the person killing him. So he already had a din of being the killer. So whether you kill someone quickly or not, you already have a din of that's the way some Meforshim explain it. Other Meforshim explain it. There's a difference between the Noahide code and the Torah code, because the Torah code is much more legalistic. You have to follow the law. In the Noahide code, you can violate the law for some ethical perspective. But in other words, ein hachinami, the executioner violated the code, the law, but by Noachites, there's a little bit more leeway in there. It's not so much a din system, whatever. That's one approach. Now the truth of the matter is that that the second approach Moshe totally rejects on other arguments, and Moshe doesn't give that first approach. Moshe basically says maybe the Noachite code is different from the Torah code. The Torah says lo tirtzach, you can't commit murder. And the Noachite code says shofet dam ha'adam, if you spill blood in the blood. So maybe according to the Noachite code, it's only if you do violent murder against the will of the person that's usher, but it's not usher to kill someone with their reshus. That's his arguments. He says if that's true, then the executioner, he says ulai, the executioner didn't violate the Noachite code, because Chachamim said, please, if you want to kill me faster, go right ahead. That's not against the Noachide code, so it was permitted. So that's Ramosha's argument. But the point is, the only reason that Ramosha could even possibly come up with an idea like that is because he understands both sides of the coin. On one hand, the guy is in pain. On the other hand, it's a life. How do you deal with this? And the fact is in many ways, that's the balancing that exists. In order to be a balancer, you have to understand both concepts. That's something that I think comes about from Torah analysis.
So I don't want to sound like a heretic, but if you can argue with Hashem, why can't you argue with halacha?
You can't
argue with Hashem.
So you can only argue against halacha within the realm of halacha, right?
The fact is that my personal answer, you're talking about Avram Avinu. The difference, my personal answer of Avram Avinu and the Akedah, is that Avram could argue with God because he had no tzivui. He wasn't called upon to act in any way.
What about Moshe?
Moshe is different. In other words, Moshe never argues with God, I'm not going to do what you told me to do. Avram, but the fact is, he never said I won't do it. In other words, by Avram Avinu, when he argued with stone, it was in theory. Hey, I don't see the justice of it. At the Akedah, when he had a tzivui, do this, he didn't argue.
At the beginning of his whole career with the snap,
he gave arguments
that he didn't want to do.
Arguments
until God finally shut up and said, I'm telling you.
And that's right. So Avraham said, Moshe was basically saying, listen, here's my argument. But in the end, when Kodesh Baruch Hu said, go, that was it. So the point is that's a different issue. But the question that you're raising, what? It's a different issue. What?
There's a Breslau Torah on it that talks about that the tzaddik, like Moshe represents the tzaddik, and talks with Hashem about the din. Then the din is passed down through the Eitzah of how to deal with it, but the din is still made. Interesting.
Okay. So, I mean, all I'm trying to say is, and I didn't expect to cover the whole gamut over here. What I just want to point out, what I wanted to say, and hopefully we're going to talk about more of this in terms of in future weeks, is that I personally feel that in talking to people about ethiks, what I usually find is that when they talk kashrus, it's halacha, it comes from Torah, so Torah's ethics. Yeah, they may quote a halacha, but it's not because the halacha is telling them the ethic. It's a lot of times it's because they already have the ethical feeling and they have a source to back them up.
Right.
Okay, so they say, listen. So I see a lot of people using for kibbud av v'eim, for example, right? It's kibbud av v'eim.
Please go on.
Okay, and then they say this is this. I'm sitting there saying, did you ever learn the halachas of kibbud av v'eim? Okay, the point is that. And this should not be taken. Go learn the law.
There's very few halakas on
go learn. But the fact of the matter is, there's also big machokim, and so. But the fact of the matter is, or you take shalom bayis, people, they have the ethic, and then they find a Torah source to back it up, and they immediately assume that since Torah is touching upon this ethic, it must be the ethic that they already feel. And you find this a lot of times. The fact is that the real underlying issues that are involved in these ethical issues are not really fully investigated. And then what happens is that even when they are investigated, they have to be investigated in a different manner, because it's not like kashrus where the system is totally inclusive.
Right.
There's this other yardstick we're dealing with, and the fact of the matter is the Torah is dealing with these two yardsticks, and it's not totally out of the realm. And it becomes a much more complicated and complex matter of how you deal with these things, and that becomes all part of the issue. So the point is that we lose sight of many of the factors involved, and that what occurs is trying to find Jewish ethics. I'll give you a total other example about Jewish ethics, vis-a-vis the Gaza war. People don't recognize what the real ethical issue was. Why you had all these people in the world yelling and screaming about ethics, right? Disproportionate killing. The fact of the matter is that the idea of nationalism is very unique to Jewish ethics. Christianity's original attack upon Judaism included the fact that ethics should be universal. And Christianity was very, very specific that nationalism had no ethical value. All humanity is one entity. Nationalism is only something in this world. And that's really behind their statement of give unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. Okay? One of the aspects of that statement was nationalism is not really an ethical value. Yeah, while you're working in this world, you're nationalistic. But really, if you want to be above that in terms of ethics, it should be universal. On that level, okay, universally, if you count all human beings, let's look at this. You're concerned about human beings dying in Israel because you're being attacked. So you got to defend them. But it got to a point where you're killing 1,000 human beings over here because maybe 6 would get killed over there. That's not proportional. That was the argument. The argument is that
they don't care when it's the opposite. When we let 1,000 prisoners for one of that they don't mention.
But the fact is, when you get to ethics, because you're still freeing 1,000 people. The point is that
for one person.
But the fact is, because the fact is that 1,000 people are going to be free. So it's good. The point is that one of the arguments of Torah is nationalism. Okay, and I just point this up in an insight I just wrote, that we refer to the Shiva Amamun. When we talk universalism on Sukkot, the fact of all mankind, we don't talk about universal mankind. We talk about the 70 nations. We actually believe that the world should be divided into nations, and every nation has a value, and every nation has a koyach. And nationalism is not just in terms of the Jewish nation, but nationalism has a value concept.
Every nation has its own angel.
It has its own angel and so forth. The fact of the matter is nationalism. Judaism believes that nationalism is a value. Okay? We believe in some aspect of division. A division that eventually leads to a unity, but a unity out of parts. That's why Judaism, and you really see this in terms of tzedakah also. Take care of family first, take care of community first, right? The fact of the matter is that that's completely contrary to the Christian value. The Christian value says giving you something you never met is a higher value because it shows it's totally selfless. The point is divisions, and nationalism has an aspect of selfhood and extension of selfhood. That's Jewish nationalism. That's an example of Jewish nationalism. So the point is, from a Jewish perspective, hey, wait a second, we have a greater responsibility to our nation than to other humans. Now, do we have considered for other human beings? Absolutely. That's why we said, hey, listen, we tried to limit this, and we were moral and ethical, and it's very true. The Israeli army acted as absolutely good, but there was a unique Jewish aspect to that ethics because it still said nationalism was a value. Now, will other nations do it? Yes, most other nations would act the same way. The difference is that we declare that to be an aspect of our ethical essence. Okay? So that's an example. That's an example of it. But the point is that what I find, what I'm just saying is that when we talk about all these issues, is that I just find that I'd like to spend some time looking at ethical issues in the ethical issues within the Torah, and spending time looking at various aspects of those ethical issues.
That's interesting.
The balancing of the two yardsticks, questions of how we read universalism into Torah, how Torah talks universal. It's a very different idea. That actually is a big issue in terms of how you look at psak. One view of psak is you ask the Godel. Okay? Okay. There's another view of psak that psak should really happen on the frontier. Okay. Now, what's usually an example of this is the case is Rabbi is perhaps an example of that. There was when Rabbi Dratch was the rabbi of Shor Shemaim, he told me the following story. He said that Rabbi Lamb spoke in the shul, and Rabbi Lamb told over the following case. And he said that Rabbi Lamb had a really difficult shaila, and he wanted to talk it over with his Rabbi, the Rav, Rabbi. So he went over and he said, "Okay, Rabbi, here's the issue." So the Rabbi said, "Okay, let's talk about it." So Rabbi basically checked him out to see if he had really understood the issue, like in halacha, right? And he was really investigating. He was really talking, traveling back and forth with the issue. And Rabbi Lamb obviously knew his stuff. Okay, so he talked it out and so forth and so forth and so forth and so forth. Then Rabbi says, "Okay, so you know the issues, fine." So then Rabbi Lamb says, "Okay, but what should I do?" So Rabbi said, "You're a Rav, paskin." Rabbi Yeshua wouldn't paskin. He said, "Paskin, you're a Rav." And Rabbi Dratch told me there was a mishkiach there walking. He says, "You couldn't believe it." He was asking a gadol or shaila, and the gadol wasn't answering. Because that's part of the issues. I had a case once when I had really tough shailas, and I would actually speak to a person who was a posek, and because I didn't want to pass it alone, so I talked it over. And this person I spoke to said to me, "Listen, I'm not paskening. It's your psak. You want to talk over the issues with me, that's fine. But in the end, it's your call."
Wow.
Okay? Because you're the person who wants to be paskin. And that reflects the idea of how much you really know the details of the case versus the theoretical law. So a gadol may know the theoretical law, but the point is what really are the innuendos of the specific case.
So you get them up
so the point is that knowing the case matters. So the first thing you do is you want to mevayir the actual case. So if you're talking an ethical issue, to me, you want to mevayir what you think the ethical issues are, what you want to do. Then, as you mevayir the case, then you introduce the halacha to clarify how you're going to answer the case. But a lot of the issues, and that's really a lot of times the problem. A lot of times the problem with psak is you really didn't know, you didn't know a lot of the details or the unique innuendos of the specific case. Okay, and you really have to know them, because a lot of times it's not just it's not just a black and white
so
stuff.
Are you like creating a triangle? The universal ethical law, the halachic law, and then the details of the case?
I wouldn't call it a triangle. The details of the case apply in any
building, whatever.
There's always, in any legal system, there's questions of facts and questions of law. Okay. The point is you first want to work out the facts. Okay. What I am presenting here is in terms of law. Halacha triumphs. The revelation of Torah always triumphs. That's the case of the Akedah. Okay, but the point is that unique in halacha is when you talk in terms of ethics, you're not talking to an individual who is totally blank.
Right.
The individual already has his own perspectives and already has his own idea.
So there has to be a bias.
It's built in. Right? You already have, so when you're working out the halacha, you're already having a certain aspect of this internal mechanism.
That's why Selach Harav is so important.
What?
That's why Selach Harav is so important.
The Selach Harav is important in terms of working out, but the fact is that's important in any halacha, Selach Harav. But the point is that's why it's important for the person you ask to know you. But the fact is that in terms of just working out the halacha, to me, it's significant that people recognize that you are not a blank page, right? Especially in ethical issues, you already have a certain internal mechanism that has opinions on ethics. Okay, so therefore it becomes much more of a different dynamic, and that's one of the issues I have in ethical analysis of the halacha. Obviously, you're going to follow halacha. You're not going to sit there and say, I'm not following halacha. But the fact is, you have to understand that halacha is not working in a vacuum. When you say a piece of meat is kosher or wrong, yeah, it depends on how much you want to eat that piece of meat. But that's not an ethical issue. The halacha will tell you whether the piece of meat is kosher or not. But when you're talking an ethical issue, you already have opinions about that. And not only that, part of the issue is you read your opinions into the halacha without even knowing it. What I find is a lot of people immediately assume the halacha has their own internal ethical perspectives.
Right.
And it becomes...
Which is shallow.
No, it could be... They haven't really fully investigated.
Right, which is shallow.
Right, okay.
They're shallow, like they didn't delve deep into that.
Right, and understand.
By being shallow and self-fulfilling,
and understanding these things and so forth. You know, it's like and then they'll throw out a halachic statement like, here's an ethical concept, and you're looking at the person like that, and look at the person saying, yeah, what you've done is you've taken a Jewish term and applied it to your own personal ethic, without really feeling how your personal ethic really relates to that term and how that term really expresses the personal ethic. And there are examples of that, and it therefore opens up new perspectives. You may end up with universal ethics, but I also think there's a certain dynamic of Torah ethics that's being missing, and we hope we'll get to it.
Okay.